we're surrounded by a lot of ultra successful people, and it's easy to fall into this trap of comparing yourself to them and what they're doing, and I should be doing that too, and I need to be going to this, or I need to be doing that. And sometimes that what they're doing is what works for them because they're so far out ahead of you. You're not even ready for that kind of thing yet. Like, hey, listen, why don't you learn to crawl before you start trying to run with the big boys and big girls? And so today we're talking about comparison syndrome. Welcome back, everybody, to a brand new episode of Hit 'em Straight, your newest favorite podcast. Make sure that you're liking, subscribing, and sharing today's episode with anybody that you feel would be edified, enriched, and inspired. Shawn, and Christian Galt here with you, just as we are each and every week, bringing you just our random thoughts that are inspired from our morning walk, something that we have begun to do, get a little movement and exercise in. Something that I find super valuable. In a previous episode, we were talking about surrounding yourself with people that will uplift you, edify you. You mentioned in that episode, in your darkest times, I know personally I've gone through a rough 2025, and Christian has been there. Those morning walks are invaluable. But also you mentioned, it's in our best times too. I think it's easy when everything is great to be like, I don't need those stupid morning walks. I don't need to do my exercise. I don't need to, and the list is super long. It's when things are rough that you find out who's on your side, and you find out who you can turn to. And those are the people that uplift you. When things are good, I think you need to treat it like things are rough, and also continue to surround yourself with those individuals. And as we walk along, we are like, man, we should take some of these things we talk about and put them on a podcast. And so here we are with Hit 'em Straight, bringing it to you just straight, raw, slightly edited, but not that edited. And hey, today we're talking about comparison syndrome. As we walk along, we talk about life and business. One of the things that's easy to fall into is, and we're surrounded by a lot of ultra successful people, and it's easy to fall into this trap of comparing yourself to them and what they're doing, and I should be doing that too, and I need to be going to this, or I need to be doing that. And sometimes that what they're doing is what works for them because they're so far out ahead of you. You're not even ready for that kind of thing yet. You like, hey, listen, why don't you learn to crawl before you start trying to run with the big boys and big girls? And so let's talk today about comparison syndrome. And I'm wondering for you, Christian, you're successful, so I'm sure that a lot of people already compare themselves to you. So there's that side of it too. Like, hey, listen, don't compare yourself to me. I put in my time back in, Gulf Coast Insurance, back in that day, and you need to, learn that. One of the things that we talk a lot about is finding people who are already where you want to be and asking them for directions. But oftentimes what we do is we find people who are where we want to be, and we try to just become them, right? So I look at Christian, I'm starting my insurance agency, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to be Christian. And that's not smart. That's actually a recipe for disaster. What would be smart is to find Christian and say, well, listen, I want to be you someday. So walk me back when you were me and you had a one-room insurance agency and it was a one-person show. What did you do then in order to get to where you are? Because that's not what you do today. You have all these people, and you have a legitimate business, but that's not where you started. So what did you do initially? Because that comparison syndrome could be so dangerous, because I just try to become the outcome versus learning the journey. And I think that's one of the things that's also very important when we're looking at comparison syndrome. Sure, Christian's doing super well today, but has he always been doing well? Am I ready to weather the same storms? That's where the advice would come in, where you would tell me, listen, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to do this. You're going to find success, but then you're going to be overwhelmed because you're a one-person show. So then you're going to need to make a hire. And that's going to be scary, because you're going to think, hey, man, I have to hire somebody. Now I'm going to be taking away from my own money. I don't have the money to hire someone. And so those are the pieces of advice that are the most valuable. So let's talk about maybe in your own life, do you ever find where you are now today, you slipping into comparison syndrome?
Honestly, I don't. I'd be lying if I said I compare myself to other people. I really don't. I've never had that issue. Not to sound arrogant, but I just know who I am, and I'm thankful every day for who I am. But to answer what you were talking about when I first started, it was a different time. So now you can go to YouTube, you can listen to podcasts, and you can learn. But when I started the agency, it was different. It was me and the guys that I would look up to say, hey, I want to go talk to this insurance agency owner that's been doing it for 30, 40 years. There's a lot of cold shoulders. I remember reaching out to some people saying, hey, sir, how did you do that? And they're like, basically scram. Like they just didn't have the time. So, and I think that's a double-edged sword. I think that was actually a blessing, and it was a gift that somebody just wasn't going, here's the cheat sheet, just run this play. Because I failed for literally a decade of just maybe, let's say an insurance policy now takes 20 minutes to write, 40 minutes total by the time you do the application process. It would take me 8 hours. 8 hours, because I would have to call and I'd have to speak to an underwriter, and the underwriter would go, how do you not know how to do this? Because again, I didn't have an agency principal. I was the agency principal. I didn't have a mentor or teacher. I was just learning on the fly. So because of that, it helped with my communication skills, because I learned that I'd have to call an underwriter and basically beg him or her to help me. And they first would start off with just, read the policy. Insurance policies are this big. And I'm going, I don't have time for that. I got to get this person an insurance policy. So it made me start the training program. It made me start to say to myself, I have to basically explain these policies to these clients as if they're 10 years old. I don't hear a lot of people doing that. Well, I did that because I was trying to teach myself. But as time went on, I started training other agents that way. And basically clients were going, that was great. I never heard it that way. That simplified it. So a lot of my bumps in the road, if you will, really helped me, because I did not do great in school, didn't really apply myself in school. And I think if I had somebody that said, here are the answers to tests, run this play, I don't think we'd be sitting here right now. I don't think I'd be where I am in life, because I didn't learn that way. I learned by touching the fire and getting burned. I learned by saying a smart comment as a teenager and getting popped in the face. That's how I learned. And that's how I still learn to this day. So it ended up being a complete blessing to learn that way, and not someone just say, just do this.
I want to go back to, you don't compare yourself to people. I think that that's an envious thing for a lot of people that might be listening or watching, and like, wow, like, wait a minute, he doesn't compare himself to anyone. He knows who he is. How did you get to be that way? Have you just always been that way? You just, every day since you were young, you just wake up and be Christian Galt, and never looked at someone and been like, wow, I wish I had that car. I wish I could, speak, as well as they do on stage, or I wish I could have that opportunity to meet that person or whatever. You just, how did you get to be that way?
Yeah, I've never really thought about it, if I'm being honest. I never even thought about it before. Now, have I seen actors on TV? Like, I remember reading a men's fitness book, magazine on Mark Wahlberg 20 years ago, and being like, man, that's awesome. But I never was like, I want to be Mark Wahlberg. I remember thinking, that guy's in great shape. He's successful. What does he do? And I remember it literally said he gets up at 4 a.m., he works out, he goes golfing, he does takes his kids to school. And I remember being like, wow, I almost celebrated him. Like, oh my God, I'm literally wearing municipal shoes right now because of him. But that was 20 something years ago, when I had certain people in life that would come into my life, whether it was a book or reading like a Joe Dispenza, as you would say, or a Wayne Dyer, or an Ed Milet, or an Andy Frisella, any of these guys that I would look to, and I would see, I never was like, I want to be Andy Frisella. I was never like, I want to be Ed Milet. Never. I looked at them and said, wow, like, that's really cool. And I remember when they would have successes, I'd be super happy for them. But I don't know, maybe it's just not my DNA. I never wanted to be anybody else. It just never really occurred to me. Like, again, if I saw somebody that was in shape, I'd go, man, that guy's built great. I wish I had a six pack. But then I would say, okay, well, how did he get there? And I'd work towards it. And I'd figure out what was important to me, what wasn't. And again, back to what we talked about in the last episode, pattern recognition. I would look for pattern recognitions of success leaving clues and what are people doing to have those successful things. And I just kind of run with it. But I've never really looked at anyone and said, man, I wish I was him or her. It's never occurred to me, honestly.
Well, that's an interesting bend on it, because I think that, I don't know that people are saying, I wish I was Christian. There see elements like, I wish hey, I watch on social media, Christian plays a lot of golf. I wish I could play a lot of golf. And I think that's like the comparison, right? Like my life isn't that way. But that's interesting. You're saying that you utilize that as inspiration. We see people that were like, oh, I wish I had that car. I wish I had that, six pack, or, that ability to golf. I wish I was a scratch golfer. But then what you're saying is the key was that then you were like, well, how did you get to be a scratch golfer? Like what did you do? Back to, what are the steps that I would have to take? And then what's interesting in that, whenever there is comparison, because, I might look at your agency and say, man, I wish I had an agency and, as successful as Galt Insurance. But then I would have to ask you, well, what did you have to do to get that? And then you might start outlining the sacrifices and, the ups and downs and, the difficult times. And I might say, well, that sounds terrible. Like, I don't want that. I don't want to do that. And I think that's one of the dangers too of comparison syndrome, because you're just seeing the end outcome. Like, wow, you have a six pack. What did you have to do to get that? Well, I train 6 days a week. I've eliminated all carbs from my diet. I eat chicken breast, every day at every meal. And you're like, wow, that just sounds like not fun. So you might decide not to do that, which would be the reason why you don't have the six pack, right? You weren't willing to wake up at 4 a.m. and work out every day. And then, all of those things. That's interesting. How do you utilize discernment? Have you ever had instances where maybe you looked at a situation, maybe like someone like a Mark Wahlberg, or some situation where you're like, I want that, but then you were like, but that's not for me?
Yeah, I mean, two answers to that. The first thing that came to my mind is when you talked about, how I talk about I want to become a scratch golfer. I really started with my why. Why did I want to do that? And when I really think about it, why I even got into golf was because of social media. I remember about 8 years ago being on social media and seeing Ed Milet and Max Milet, his son, who was younger at the time, playing golf on a golf course together. And I thought that was like, oh, this is great. A father and a son could play golf together. Max might have been like 10 years old and Ed was probably in his 40s. And I was going, that was my why. I remember thinking, okay, I want to be able to play golf with my son. I want to play golf with my wife, my daughter. I'm like, wouldn't that be cool? And you got to remember, at the time, I never played golf. Last sport I played was baseball 20 years prior. So I didn't know anything about golf. Golf was not, but my why was, I kind of manifested and I saw it. I was like, I see myself. And I think Boston was like 2 years old at the time. I was like, I see myself in Boston playing golf together and having that bond. And my father and I had, my father grew up playing cricket in the island, so he didn't play baseball, but he'd throw me batting practice, but we never had to play baseball together. Mm-hmm. So I was like, how cool would that be to play golf with my son and my wife? And that's where the whole why thing came up. And then as time got better, how do I get there? Okay, we have to sell our house and move into a golf community. What's the next step? Okay, you have to buy a golf membership. And I went through the whole thing. And then, I didn't know if it was going to happen or not. Boston played baseball for 3 years and then quit baseball. And I was like kind of bummed because I wanted him to play baseball. And then he said to me, Dad, I want to play golf because I want to hang out with you. And I almost forgot that this was why we were here. I forgot for a couple of years because I'm like, focus. All right, he wants to play baseball. I played baseball. I can coach him. And then this was only like 2 years ago. And I was like, wow, this is what I manifest. This is what I visualized in my mind, is that this is why I want to play golf. Because I want to grow old with my wife and my kids and travel and go to Ireland and Scotland and play golf there and all these places as a family. I was like, how cool would that be? So that's where the whole golf thing happened for me. And that was the why, but it wasn't about, I just want to be a scratch golfer. I do want to be a scratch golfer. And I'm just saying that was kind of where it all started. And that was actually my love for even following Ed at the beginning. It wasn't the fact that Ed, I think it was 200 or $300 million worth of whatever. It wasn't that was very cool, but that's only cool for like a week. That does nothing to me in my life. I'm like, yeah, okay. But as I got to know him and I joined his group and I started seeing things, I remember telling him, I was like, Ed, the coolest thing I think about you is the fact that you and your son go golfing together, and then to watch the son get older and then get accepted into college, and then them go on golf trips and go. I mean, that's the play. That's the play that I run with Boston, as you know now. That's what we do. And I mean, we just played Evermore with you, me, and Boston and Griff with a 12-year-old, and then we went to Bay Hill. We're traveling now, and we're doing exactly what I want to do. And so, I kind of went off a little bit on that, but that's kind of I found my why. My why was like I wanted to connect with my family. And golf was that vehicle.
Yeah. So when you're looking at that, I think sometimes too, I talk a lot about you got to be careful that you don't adopt other people's agendas. So let's say that you are just a single 24-year-old and you were like, I want to have a successful insurance agency like Christian, and I see that Christian plays a lot of golf, so I'm going to play golf. Well, you're single, you're 24, you don't have any kids, and now you're disconnected. You don't even understand why. And I appreciate you sharing that story, because I think that's also part of the comparison syndrome. Listen, maybe I always tell people, for me, the fascination with country clubs, like why do you have a membership at a country? So maybe someone would see me and be like, I want to be like Shawn, and so I got to join a country club. But the reason why I am a member at a country club is because when I was 16, one of my first jobs was I worked at B. Dalton Bookstore. I don't even think that exists anymore. But while I worked at B. Dalton, a friend was like, you should come work at Pine Valley Country Club in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I was like, oh yeah, that would be cool. What's the job? And the job was shining shoes. Now, you're too young to know this, but back in the day when I was 16, at a country club, usually the guys would show up in suits, right? And so they would have dress shoes, and they would put their dress shoes in their locker, and they had the golf shoes weren't like today where, what you're wearing, sneaker type golf shoes. They're saddle shoes and basically dress shoes with cleats in them. Right. So they would put their work dress shoes in their locker, and we would shine them just like regular shoe shine. And then they would go out and golf. So that meant we had, 4 hours from the time you put that shoe in there to us getting them turned around. But then as soon as it was turned around, you would put your golf spikes in there, which were, like golf. They were like dress shoes with spikes, and we would have to shine those shoes and have those ready for tomorrow. I mean, it was just constantly, I was just shining shoes constantly. And I realized like these guys would come in and they would give us these really big tips back then. They'd give us like 20, 50, and some guys would give us $100 tip. And I was like, holy smokes, I'm 16 years old. And I remember my thought was, what do these guys do? Right? My dad didn't have the ability to play golf on a Wednesday morning. I was like, what do these guys do for work? What do they do? How do they have that lifestyle? And so that's what inspired me. I was like, I want to have that lifestyle. My why was I want to build a lifestyle that I could be like that. I wanted to be able to play golf, and I also wanted to be able to give, 20, 50, and $100 tips to people so that they would be like, whoa. And not because it was like flash, but because I know how much that inspired me. I was like, that's so inspiring. I oftentimes, if I can find, we were recently in New Jersey and, playing some older clubs, and those older clubs still have that same shoe shine room with the wheels, and you're up there. And I always think like telling them like, listen, that's where I started. Right. I started in the shoe shine room, right? Shining these shoes. And one day, whatever you're dreaming of, thinking of, that, whatever it is, it can come true. But that's so true. You have to connect with the why, because if you're like, well, I want to be like Shawn, so I'm going to join a country club, and you don't understand why that's important to me, then you end up with this country club membership and you're like, what am I doing? Like, why do I even have this? This is so dumb. Because for me, it's really not about being a member of the club to create relationships and get business, although that happens. And there's a lot of people that want that because of that. Like they're like, listen, I'm going to join the club because of business development, but that's not why I did it. Right. And so I think that's super important that you really find a way to connect with that why so that you don't fall into that trap of comparison syndrome. But I want to go back to, you reached out to people and they were like, scram. And, that didn't deter you. But now where you are, people reach out to you and they're like, hey, can you give me some advice? Do you have any tips? Because I think that the reach out probably starts with comparison syndrome. Like, I want to be like you. Right. So now they're like, hey, I'm reaching out. And this could be, like you said, a double-edged sword, because the person might be a Christian and be like, hey, yeah. Or the person might be like, listen, I don't have time for you. Who are you anyways? And that can drive you even further into comparison syndrome, or it could motivate you, like in your case. But if we wanted to do it correctly, from your experience, if I'm comparing myself to you and I'm like, well, I just want to be like Christian, that's the life I want to have. How should I approach you if I want to be able to, reach you, access you, and maybe get one or two really good tips on my next steps to that journey?
Yeah. I mean, again, back to the double-edged sword, it's an interesting concept, because again, if someone reaches out to me, the way I handle things is I literally do give them the answers to the test. I tell them our playbook, sometimes to the point where the execs at our company are like, why are you telling these people this? You should stop telling them this. I really believe that if someone's going to be successful, they're going to be successful. End of story. Whether I give them the answers or not, they will figure it out. I'm either going to fuel them or they're going to figure it out on their own. So my approach has always been, here's the answers. Here's what you need. Now, I might not give it all to them in the first sitting. I'll try to ease into it. But I can usually sniff out within the first 5 to 10 minutes if they're serious about it, or if this is more so just I was thinking about doing insurance because I heard you were a D student and I'm a D student and you're making money and you're not very smart, so I figured I could do it too. And I do get that a lot, by the way. I get that a lot. Believe it or not, I get that a lot, where friends from the past that have basically been like, oh, I see what you're doing now. It's basically, anyone can do that. So I want to open up an office with you. And I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, no, it's not an option. But yeah, to answer your question, Shawn, you can go either way with it. Again, I feel like if you really tell somebody, here are all the steps you need to do, and you're coming from a good place, they can take it, and usually they're not going to do it anyways. But the real ones, that one person out of the 9 out of 10 that is actually wants to do it, they're going to take that. They're going to make themselves. So I can usually sniff that out. And sometimes it's just a conversation about, whatever it may be. But you made me think of something real quick before I forget. When you start that why, like my why was, hey, I saw Ed and Max and I want to do that with Boston. The why expands. The why expands because then it opens up doors that I didn't even know existed. Let me go down this rabbit hole a little bit. So the why was that, and then it turned into you join the club. Okay. Didn't know if we need to do that, but yeah, let's do that because it's part of the why. That's then turned into pasta nights, which then turns into my wife and my kids, I have 3 kids now, having lunch and dinners around other successful entrepreneurs and business owners, and then them having conversations with my 12-year-old about, hey, what are you going to open up with? And when are you going to open this company? And hey, what are you doing with this? And let me show you your golf grip. And all these different, the why just kept evolving and changing. And then I start going, wow, this is getting even greater. And then now you're exposing your children to a different lifestyle that I didn't grow up in. But then now they see it and they're not nervous to go talk to the waiter, not nervous to talk to somebody, a CEO of a $1 billion company, or an entrepreneur that has 26 locations of whatever it may be, and they're just talking. And these people get guys and girls they just get a kick out of my kids. Like, wow, they're so well spoken. And I will challenge my kids and say, okay, go ask for this order or go ask for that, and go tip this person. And I'm teaching them the way. So the why started from just having a golf game with my son to now just growing. And now you're kind of growing this network without even trying to. That was not my purpose. But it's funny how when your heart is in the right direction of like, hey, I just want to golf with my son and my wife and everything, and you put yourselves in the right atmosphere around the right people, a lot of things happens. And then you see how it just even changes these children's lives and my wife's life and my life and everything else. It all started from that little spark. And the why has evolved. So your why might not just stay in this little box. It might evolve into greater and better things as time goes on.
So I want to reiterate that, starting with your why, I kind of want to come back to how I get into conversation with Christian.
Okay.
So Christian is somebody that's then not going to tell me to scram. And I would say, listen, because this has come back up, in order to avoid the, hey, dude, you're a D student, I'm a D student, I see how easy it is for you. Just tell me because I'm going to do the same thing. I just want to make money. So we would lead with our why. Like, I got to figure out, like, hey, listen, I want to do this. This is important to me. I know that you've accomplished it. I see what you're doing. I would like to connect with you. My question really is, like, how do I get into your world? Like, who am I? I'm, Sean Dill from Immokalee, and I'm bagging groceries, but I mean, I see you on social media. I'm like, hey, listen, this might be something that might be for me. What do I slide into your DMs? Because I know, like, there's all these people that are like, hey, can I just get 5 minutes to pick your brain? I mean, you can't say yes to every 5 minutes to pick your brain. How do I get, like, how could I represent myself to you or to anybody else in a way that would actually connect with them and maybe get them to give me 5 minutes to kind of just lay out for me the next 3 steps that I need to take from where I'm bagging groceries to the next 3 steps to getting closer to where you are?
That's a great question. I look for people that are authentic. I will directly go right from the DM to their social media. I want to see if you are posting people doing keg stands, people doing drugs. I want to see what you're about. Are you a real person? Even if you are bagging groceries, maybe you're still putting things about your life, your journey, your faith, where you are, what your goals are, like things that are uplifting. If I see any negativity at all, I don't respond, to be honest with you, because I don't want to bring that energy into my life. So if I do see somebody that is 21 years old, still looking for certain things, I will actually, like a detective, I'll go through and I'll look at their posts and I'll see what they're about. And if they're making fun of somebody or they're doing something that just doesn't align with me, to me, that door closes right away. So be very careful what you do put on social media and what you do post. Now, the flip side of it is if you're 21 years old and you reach out to me and I see that you have a proper profile picture and you have a link and maybe you've created a link tree and maybe you created a website and maybe you've done some things that may not necessarily be the end all be all, but you're at least making the attempt and the intent is there, I'll give you 3 hours of my time.
Wow.
I'll totally give 3 hours of my time. And that's why it's so important when I do talk to some of the people that are even at our office or friends or family, I'm saying, look, I understand you don't like social media. I didn't either, but you have to embrace it because at the end of the day, that is your resume. That is your business card.
Yeah.
That is it. So there's going to be 2 stories told. There's going to be the story that people are going to talk about you, and there's a story that you decide to tell about yourself. So you better tell your story and be honest about it. You do not need to take a picture in front of a plane that is not yours and post it and saying, getting on my private jet, fire up the bird or some nonsense, okay? But what would be even cooler if there was a picture of you talking with your grandmother, maybe having dinner and saying, I just learned XYZ about grandma. She told me about this cool thing, and share something, something that's inspiring, something that helps, something that's good for this world. Those are things that I would look for. So again, for anyone that is like, I just don't really know, and or at different times, even if you've got to put 3 or 4 or 5 pictures out there, but they represent what you're about as a human being and a person and what your intentions are in this world, to me, that is your business card. Now, the flip side of that is if you do send me an email or call me or somehow run into me, and then I go to look you up on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn and you're not there, that's a red flag to me too. I go, what are you hiding? Unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. I'm not saying you are hiding something. You might be one of these rare people that are so great you don't need social media, and I love those people too, and I hope God puts those people in my life. But to me, it is sometimes a red flag of like, all right, what's going on with this person? Or maybe you have a LinkedIn or an Instagram or Facebook and you haven't updated it in 4 years. What happened in those past 4 years? What's going on? Again, this is your resume. Simply speaking for business now, not necessarily anything else. But if someone was reaching out to me for business, social media is the first place I look and I examine it.
Well, this is not how I thought this episode would go, but it's better than expected, which is life. Because, when we talk about comparison syndrome, I think that what we end up learning today is that comparison syndrome might actually be a good thing. That you could look at somebody and see redeeming qualities and attributes that you aspire to. And then rather than be like, oh, don't compare yourself, I agree. Don't compare yourself because you're yourself. And, as we began, you don't want to become them. You're you. There's only one you. Just do you. But they have these redeeming qualities. They're successful in business, or, they're a scratch golfer, or they have, incredible fitness. And so you look at these qualities and you're like, yeah, I do compare myself only because I don't have that. I don't have a six pack. I'm not a scratch golfer. I don't have a $20 million a year business, and they do. And so now what we could do is, I feel like we've kind of reversed the tables on that. And it's like, well, rather than be like, hey, listen, don't compare yourself. I agree. Don't compare. But then say to yourself, well, listen, how do they have that? And then, as you have taught us, though, the first step is, why would I even want that? If I can't connect it to a why, then good for them. They have a $200 million business, but that does nothing for me. That's what you said earlier. And I don't want that. So why would I even pursue that? And that's, again, falling into other people's agendas. But if I was like, but I do want to be a scratch golfer because, and then you have to say because, and then it has to be solid, not because I want to be scratch or because I want to, flex on my friends. It's because I wanted to do this, or it would connect me with my son, or I would have a knowledge and I'd be able to do help him out and coach him better. I want to understand that as he evolves through the game and gets into college. And how would I know if this coach is good, or, I'm just paying money and they don't actually know what they're doing? So if we could connect it to that, then I could go and be like, listen, how did you get so good? And unless they just say, like, I don't know, I was just naturally gifted, I've just picked up a club and I've been, scratch ever since. They might describe a journey like yours and mine where, listen, I was like a 26 and then I just wanted to break 100. Then I wanted to break 90. And then now, you have upped your dedication. And so now you're even, tracking even ahead of that down into the single digits and in your index. And so then, like, great. So what was the journey? What did you do? What were the first steps? Because I can't break 100. So rather than talk about what you're doing now with equipment and different drills, I don't want to do the drills you do today. What did you do to get under 100? Tell me then, right? Back when you had that, set of clubs you bought from Dick's Sporting Goods, because that's what I have. I can't play. You have custom fit clubs. I can't do what you do because I don't have that. So, but what do you do when you have these clubs and you're me and you're playing at my level? I think that's incredibly important. And I think that really shifted for me the way I think about, potentially. It's like, yeah, don't comparison syndrome is so bad. It stops people from doing things. But now I have had a shift. I think that comparison syndrome is good. And it allows us to explore our why. And then it allows us to reach out and explore how to get the result that they did. Because after all, maybe you were a D student and you are a human being. So whatever you're doing, while I do agree, like, well, if you're doing it, I could do it. But the reason why their thought process is flawed, sure, right? And so I love what you've brought to the podcast today.
Just in closing, if you have something that is a gift to you, but you might not have money and you're reaching out to other successful people, figure out what that gift is. So I'll give you an example. If somebody reached out to me and said, hey, listen, Christian, I know you're a 26 handicap and I want to get you down lower. I'm a scratch golfer. Now, this is kind of what happened with Griff and I. I'll tell that story another day. But essentially, I would say to that person, hey, listen, go to another successful person. If you're really good at golf, offer to give them a free golf lesson. Offer them to teach them until they get down past 100. In return, they can teach you about life, experience, and all kinds of things. Then, if you get close with this person, maybe this person
takes you under their wing
and they mentor you. And it's cost you nothing, but there is some kind of a trade. And what happens is then it goes a little bit deeper. And then, I remember, I'll just tell you quickly about the whole Griffin thing. When Griff and I were talking, I was basically saying, listen, my why is golf. Your why is you want to get into a career. Come to Gall Insurance. I will teach you everything about insurance, about being a father, about being a husband, about everything, because he was not a husband or father just as yet. And his why grew. And I said, you teach me golf. Make sure I don't look stupid. He hasn't always been successful at that, but make sure I'm not looking stupid. And I will teach you everything, which created a friendship. And then we've grown together. He's helped me on my dark times in golf, if you will. And I've helped him in some dark times in his personal life. And now there's a value there. Griffin didn't say, hey, pay me X amount. And I didn't say, I'm going to pay you a ton. Griffin didn't come to the table with a ton of money. He basically said, I have this God-given gift and I can share it with you. And that has turned into a friendship. And then I've sat down with Griffin. And from that, it has had other people at our company go, well, I want to go on these golf trips and I want to do this. And then I sat down with Griffin, which we haven't implemented yet, but I literally said, Griffin, I want you to, we have training videos for insurance. I want you to make training videos on golf for the people at Galt Insurance that have never golfed before. And we're going to put putting mats and a putting green overlooking fifth. And I want you to take these people out that have never played golf and I want you to teach them the putt. So what happens now when Griffin goes and teaches the vice president, Sarah, who's never played golf before, how to properly chip after hours? Do you think maybe they have a conversation they've never had before? Does Griffin learn a lot from Sarah? Yes. Does Sarah and Griffin get to talk that they've never, other than just talking about insurance, they actually form a real relationship and a real respect? So then I said, make up a course. I said, as this company grows, imagine if you could join our insurance company. We'll say, not only will you not get a job, but you'll get a career, but then we're also going to make you a scratch golfer in the next 10 years. Something like that. And then I said, I want to have a Galt insurance basic class for dummies where you pull everyone in that wants to come into our conference room and sit down and say, I'm going to teach you what a bogey means, what a double, what a par means, what does it mean? Why did you circle the birdie? And just give them the why on the most basic things of golf. I go, wouldn't that be cool? And he's like, oh my gosh. So now I tapped into stuff I know that he loves and now we both love. And all of that came because he had a talent. So if you have a certain talent out there, if you want to get into real estate, construction, find the best of the best, go work for them for free. But if you have that talent, maybe your talent is you're great at hosting parties. Maybe your talent is you're great at putting on events. Maybe your talent is you're good at social media. Whatever that talent is, just say, I want to come work for you for free. I want to bring that talent and I want to learn. If there's any value to that person you bring, they will hire you.
I love it. Fantastic. Pure gold. Another fantastic episode of Hit 'em Straight. Listen, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you're liking, give us a thumbs up. We talked about that. In previous episodes, there's going to be haters. Well, you can be a non-hater by giving us a thumbs up on the episode. Make sure that you subscribe on your favorite platform. And hey, if you found this valuable, share this with someone else who you feel can benefit. We're just building the tribe of people who want to hit them straight on a weekly basis. Christian and I committed to delivering you an episode each and every week. Stay tuned next Wednesday. We'll drop yet another one. Until then, have a fantastic week.
Hit them straight.